Eat properly to fuel my training. My food background, nutrition background is quite interesting. I've shared this story before, but in 2014, I had a pretty severe eating disorder. I was starving myself. It was killing me. I mean, my organs were slowly shutting down. I was in and out of the hospital. It was pretty severe. So I had a really unhealthy relationship with food early on, which, if I'm being honest, still visits me every once in a while, depending on the stress that I'm going through in life. If I'm training for something specific, that eating disorder taught me the ability of extreme discipline and control. And I can apply that for good and I can apply that for bad. Meaning that if I need to train for something, I can be so controlled and disciplined to avoid all temptation and resist anything that's going to derail me from making progress. I can just tunnel focus on what needs to get done in order to get to where I want to be. That's the positive side of it. The negative side of it is that sometimes this control takes over and is all consuming in other areas and responsibilities in my life that I didn't want it to consume. So if I'm super stressed in terms of something we're doing in business, I will be all in. Sometimes I teeter that line of being all consumed, and I will neglect responsibilities in my personal health, my friendships, my family, other aspects of my life that are very important. So that eating disorder taught me a lot about myself early on, and it still can negatively impact my life in different ways, especially around food. I would say I now have a healthy relationship with food that can be unhealthy during certain periods of my life and seasons that I'm going through. I'm very aware of that. And then when I got to college, and like I was earlier talking about, became obsessed with the bodybuilding space, the fitness industry. It was such a fun time. Between 2009 and 2013, the online fitness space was evolving and growing. It's just like a fun stage and chapter. A lot of it was new for a lot of people. There was new research coming out. New companies were popping up. New products were being developed. The Arnold Fitness Expo was, I'd say, at its peak then. And that's when like YouTube fitness actually became pretty popular. Shortly after I started sharing my life on YouTube. And that's when the If It Fits Your Macros era really started. And I'm not sure, if you're listening to this podcast right now or watching this podcast, when you found the fitness space or how old you are, but during those years, like probably to refine the time frame, 2011, 2012, 2013, If It Fits Your Macros, or IIFYM, became really popular, especially on the online YouTube fitness space, which really just broke down the concept of calories in versus calories out. If you want to gain weight, you have to be in a caloric surplus. If you want to lose weight, you have to be in a caloric deficit. It's the law of thermodynamics. It's science. It works. But it got taken a little too far, I would say, where people were trying to fit into their diet whatever they could, regardless of quality or source of food, to either gain weight or lose weight. And because of the law of thermodynamics, it worked. You could eat Twinkies and Pop-Tarts and Burger King and donuts, and you could still make progress in terms of your body composition and even performance. People were getting shredded stepping on stage for a bodybuilding competition at 6% body fat with striated glutes and shoulders and abs. And they did that. They got to that point because they dieted for 16 to 20 weeks, hit their protein goals, prioritize protein, but then fit in all these other things into their diet to just make sure they hit their calorie goals. And again, because of the law of thermodynamics, it worked. So I kind of fell into the fitness space, the nutrition space during this time because it just so happened. This is kind of like when MyFitnessPal was becoming a thing, I guess, and more popular. Everyone had MyFitnessPal downloaded. Everyone was tracking their macros and their calories. You track your macros and calories, and you can either bulk or cut or maintain, and everyone's weighing their food at the time. And that same kind of year time frame is when I signed up for my first bodybuilding competition in 2012. Me and my brother did one together. And this was the first time we actually started tracking our calories and started tracking our macronutrients. And we both got absolutely bone shredded by utilizing the if it fits your macros approach. And I mean, I was still eating Pop-Tarts and some of these deemed unhealthier foods weeks leading up into my show, even though majority of the foods in my diet were chicken, rice, green beans, broccoli, tilapia, sweet potato, eggs, oats, bananas, stuff like that. I was still fitting in all these other things to get creative with my diet and kind of fight some of these temptations and cravings. But what I learned through this whole area, and the reason I wanted to share these stories, is because what if it fits your macros taught me. One was really how to utilize the law of thermodynamics, how to gain weight, how to lose weight. It taught me how to track my macronutrients. It taught me what serving sizes look like in terms of, a cup of rice is 200 grams, a cup and a half of rice is 300 grams, what 7 ounces of chicken looks like on a scale, what a cup of broccoli looks like when it's weighed out, the way a plate is portioned out with your different protein sources, carbohydrate sources, fat sources. Taught me a lot about nutrition. But I would argue and say that a lot of people took the if it fits your macros era a little too far. And their diet, even though they were hitting their caloric goals and their macronutrient goals on a daily basis, the sources of food they were consuming were very poor. And even though their body composition goals were being attained and achieved, performance ended up going down, decreasing, plummeting, based off the quality of food they were consuming. So my approach to nutrition has evolved over the years. And I really no longer eat to build a certain physique or modify my aesthetics, but I now eat food to fuel my performance. And I wish I would have understood this better earlier, how to really eat to properly fuel my training. So my approach now is pretty simple. I don't overcomplicate things. I have the foods that I enjoy. I lean more towards whole natural food sources as much as possible. Cage-free eggs, pasture-raised chicken, grass-fed meats, organic fruits and vegetables. I do a lot of rice. I do a lot of potatoes. Do lots of beets. Eat a lot of Steph's sourdough bread. But I don't really gravitate towards processed foods any longer. And for a few reasons. One, I don't crave them. And two, there's like an association between these whole natural food sources and how they make me feel and how they fuel my performance, as opposed to processed foods, how they make me feel and how they don't fuel my performance. So like I said, I now approach nutrition from a more simplistic perspective. Number one, I prioritize my protein intake, at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. I then follow that up with ensuring I'm consuming enough calories to fuel my training of that day, fuel my training for the upcoming days, and to optimize my recovery. I've learned that carbohydrates and sodium are some of my best friends, especially during bigger endurance efforts, workouts, and training blocks. And I have also learned how to fuel for the goal, whether that's performance and ensuring, like I said, I've consumed enough protein, calories, carbohydrates, and sodium around my training. How to fuel for the goal being weight loss. A lot of people say, like, I just can't lose weight. Well, you can. It's either that you're not tracking your calories properly, you're not actually in a caloric deficit, or you've just done so much damage to your metabolism over an extended period of time that you have to build the foundation of your health, of your metabolism, of your body before you can go into a deeper caloric deficit. And then if you want to gain weight, you just have to eat in a caloric surplus. I also hear people say on the flip side, I just can't gain weight no matter what I do. Well, you can, but you just got to eat more. And that's very unique and specific to the individual. You might have to eat a lot more. And there's ways to do that, depending on like the source of foods you're consuming, how dense they are based off their volume. Fats, dietary fats are more calorically dense than, say, proteins and carbs. But learning how to eat properly to fuel your training can make the biggest difference early on. And it doesn't have to be super complicated or complex. We look back at the IIFYM era, which was so simple. Hit your macronutrients, which will ensure you hit your calorie goals. Doesn't matter where the food comes from. I'm not saying you should do this, but when you follow those rules based off science and the law of thermodynamics, you achieve the outcome you desire. And sometimes we overcomplicate anything and everything to add in all these variables that we think will make incremental changes when in reality they don't. We don't have to complicate it, but we do need to fuel our training to ensure that we can show up, perform, and recover.